Welcome to Justice Talks. This is the podcast where we talk about the intrinsic needs of humans and how we can use that to facilitate criminal justice reform. I'm Dr. Lori Hall, and today I'm joined by two guests. If you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Lucy Lewis.
And I am Desiree, a student of Dr. Hall's.
Awesome. So today we're talking about what is justice and what does the concept of justice mean? And we've kind of talked a little bit about this in classes and in other conversations. And we came to the conclusion, like, I would like to give you a definition, but there's not really a definition that we can kind of come up with that's concrete for what justice is because of the variability of that term across humans, right? Across individuals and how and what it means to us. And I think largely that when we talk about justice, there's a variety of categories that people will give you. Like when, you ask them, what does justice mean to you? They might say something about fairness, right? They might say something about moral righteousness. They might say something about something like equality, right? And there's a lot of variation in that. So let's talk about like what justice means to us, like on an individual level.
Not only fairness, but fairness in the sense of both parties involved. So it's not just what one person thinks is right and punishing another person, but it would be looking at the situation as a whole and saying, why was this person, victimized, or why were they, targeted? Why did this person target them? And how can we come to some sort of compromise where this person feels like their needs were met, but also we're addressing the needs that caused another individual to be driven to that? And I think the compromise and the medium between that would be where justice lies for me.
So for you, it's about like fairness, but also maybe equity.
Yeah.
Okay.
God, I love that definition. I also just love the question. It's because everyone is so different. I mean, even in class when we talk about it, like we have 10 people raising their hands with something different every time,
Yeah.
which I just find amazing. But I definitely agree with you. That's exactly what justice is. But I also want to add in something about families involved too, because like parties, like we're not just talking about a victim and a perpetrator. We're talking about everyone.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think that real justice is that for everyone to feel at ease and that everyone got something out of the system. Because I know sometimes people feel wronged and that they're not getting the justice they deserve, or someone's let off easy or something like that. But like justice is like again the equal, like in.
So that's like a really Eastern view. Like when we talk about Eastern
Yeah.
ideology, we're talking about places like Asia, right? That have a very different kind of root of justice and focus, right? So they're focused more on the collective and looking at, or they view injustice as more of like disharmony. Like there's a disruption in the social order and it impacts us on a collective scale. Whereas in Western ideology, it's more about the individual, right? So it's like one person did one thing, it's insular, right? And it affects them. And yeah, there's a victim and, like whatever, they need justice. They need justice, right? And we know what it is, but it's very much focused on what we're going to do about you and what you did rather than how can we repair the harm that's been created as a collective, right?
And
So I
restore
think
the
that's
harmony
interesting. Yeah, and
of the
about
community.
getting that balance back, the harmony and bringing community back together. And there's not much that you see. We're such an individualistic society here in America, right? And we're very focused on like staying in your lane and pay attention to yourself. Don't worry about other people and just you do you, right? And if you mess up, well, then you are going to pay the consequences and we will be the ones that decide what that is, right? For me, I think justice is where we are able to remedy the root, right? So I'm not so much concerned with this idea of punishment. Like I'm anti-punishment, I guess, if that's a thing. Like I don't know, like not to say that people shouldn't be held accountable, right? I think that punishment and accountability are different,
Mm-hmm.
right?
For sure.
And I, speaking from my own experiences of being victimized, um, there was never like an amount of time that someone could do that would make me go, I feel better. Justice is served, right? Because we're not really focused on the root needs of both the victim and the offender. And I think when we think about what a victim needs for justice to occur, they need healing. But when we think about for justice to occur and we examine offenders, right? They need healing, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need to look at, well, why did they do these things? What contributed to this? What experiences have they had? What, lack of resources and opportunities are they facing? What can we do to really get to the root cause of the why? But we also need to heal the victim, right? And healing does not come in a number of days or an amount of dollars. It just can't ever. It doesn't, right? And we're not talking about when money was stolen, right? We're talking about, things outside of that. And really what victims need restored is their safety, their security, their dignity, right?
The intangibles.
The intangibles. And our justice system does not even focus on it. They do not care. You need here's a referral. Here's a business card for somebody. Go and take care of this yourself. And they do the same thing with offenders. Here, you need to go sign up for this anger management, or you need to go sign up for this. And then they're left to go and manage it themselves, right? And the very reason they got there is because they were not able to access the resources and the opportunities at their disposal, right? We can talk about, and we've had these conversations all the time about, oh, we have all these resources. People have all these opportunities. Okay, we do. But whether or not people can access them, and accessibility is a lot more complex than we think, right? Mm-hmm. Being able to actually get services is different than being able to get to services, right? And knowing how to get services, right? To fill out applications for services is, a very lengthy task, right? And for individuals that are suffering, it's overwhelming.
I feel like actually wanting to go and do that is one of the biggest things too. Like people are scared. Like they don't think that they either deserve the healing, that it's not possible for them. So you can throw the resources at them saying, no, this is going to make you feel better. It's going to do all this. But like, it's still like everyone's mindset, I feel like is the root of all of it.
It's a damning system too, because the victim gets punished again. The offender gets punished over and over. Both victim and offender are getting punished all of the time, right? A victim, is having to be challenged all of the time. Well, what were you doing? And what were you wearing? Or why were you there? Or, what could you have done, right, to prevent this? And so often it's just exhausting, right? Because you're constantly met with this blame of somehow you did something wrong. And if you're constantly getting those messages, right, you believe them.
Yeah.
I know plenty of times things have happened to me and I still carry the weight of like what I could have done better. And I know that I even participate in a lot of self-protective mechanisms to this day to prevent my own victimization, right? And it's just a disheartening system. But offenders are met with the same thing. They could go through all of the programs and they can check off all the boxes of the requirements that they're supposed to do. And then they're still not able to get housing. They're not able to get certain government benefits. They're not able to find employment that's actually good, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not able to, access other opportunities, like maybe even voting and things like that. And so like, there's just this constant reminder that you are bad. You should be punished. Right? And we don't ever allow for true healing to actually occur in Western societies, right? Mm-hmm. In Eastern societies, they're more focused on reparation and healing and restoration. than we are, right?
I think one key point that you said too is they can check off all the boxes, but we as a society don't do anything to help reintroduce them healthily into society. We've had this conversation when someone's released from prison, it could be 2 in the morning, and we don't help give them transportation, or somebody is given a drug program or an anger management program, and they're released back into that same environment. And how can
Yeah.
we expect that a 8-week program or a 12-week program is gonna undo everything or heal somebody in that amount of time, where they can have those long lasting effects without any follow-up?
Yeah, you can't heal in the same environment that hurt you.
Like, just talking right now, like, justice is a rehabilitation, and like how you can't rehabilitate someone if you don't help them. Like, these people who are released, they're doing everything they can, like, to get a degree, to get this, to get that, but they can't use it because we won't let them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not justice for anyone.
Yeah, exactly. That's not justice for anyone, because what happens, right? So they can't get a place to live. They can't get a job. What happens?
Now
They
they
go
have to
back
use
to
illegitimate means
they have to use
to be able
illegitimate
to
means,
survive.
right?
Mhm.
And so then they're back involved in the justice system. And what does that mean? Taxpayer dollars, right? So we're funneling more money. We have to increase the budgets, and then what does that mean? Money comes out of the hands of the people who are working and that are supporting and paying taxes, right? And so then they are facing challenges, right? So it's like it's cyclical.
And we're ostracizing them for being put in a situation where they have to be able to survive, and they're not able to do that through legitimate means. So we're also enabling that cycle to continue.
I think it's such a broken system, right? But I think that people are afraid of reform.
Oh yeah.
You hear it all the time.
Oh my God.
We
yes.
need criminal justice reform. Yes, but not too much.
We've been doing this and it's been working. So
Right.
why fix something that's not
Right.
broken?
It's also
Absolutely.
just education. I feel like people are like, no, it does something, and you're like,
Mhm.
no, it doesn't.
Oh,
Sorry.
that's absolutely true, right?
Or
We
the
have been
amount of
talking.
research that's been done on things,
Yeah.
and people can't implement it for budgeting or fear of change, or they
Yeah.
don't believe in what's been researched and documented, and it's because it's that fear of change.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think that our views about justice are so narrowly defined. Like, okay, some people say it's about, doing what is fair or what is equal or this moral rightness, and these are all subjective and arbitrary, right? What's fair to me might not be fair to you. What's equal to me might not be equal to you. And what I think is morally right might not be morally right to you. There's so much subjectivity, but there's so much narrowness in it, right? It doesn't even, and even those, it doesn't account for healing. It doesn't have space for healing. It doesn't, right? And if we look at the theories of justice, right? Like, we've got 4 theories of justice, right? We've got distributive justice, we've got retributive justice, we've got restorative justice, and then we have transformative justice, which is a newer one on the game. But distributive justice was about, enacting punishments that were equal or in distribution to the crime, right?
Like the eye for an eye. Saying,
Yeah. And I mean, and that kind of goes into the retributive as well. But distributive was, about making sure that, people got the amount that they needed, right? Retributive justice was very much this eye for an eye. Like, if you're going to do this to me, I'm going to do this to you. So, like, if we could think about, like, oh, well, if you stole from me, I'm cutting your hand off, right? And it's like, what?
That's equal.
Right? But it was more about retribution. Like, you're taking from me, I'm taking from you, right? And then we have some more newer theories, the restorative justice, which is looking at trying to repair harm, but I think it falls flat.
We've talked about how difficult it is, because once you take something that's so intangible from somebody, how do you repair that? How do you repair somebody's feeling of safety and security?
Yeah. And I think a lot of the restorative things, like, they do healing circles and things like that, But I think that's really, really difficult because, like I've said before, like if people don't want to do that,
Mm-hmm.
you can't force that, right? And with restorative justice, that's very much what it is. It's trying to, create something that's inorganic. I mean, I just, for myself, like, I don't know how comfortable I would be like, oh, yeah, let's sit down and talk about this. And, like, let's hold hands and, talk about what you did to me and it's going to be better. Like, I don't think I would really ever want to do that. Like I've been through a lot of things in my life and I I think about that all the time. Like, oh, should I go have a conversation with this person? Maybe it'll be better. And it just I always come to the same place. Like and I've told you this before. They're never going to give you what you want.
Exactly.
They're never going to
Mhm.
look at you and go, "I'm so sorry for what happened." And like I wish this or that or whatever, right? They're not. They're never going to give it. And even if they say those words,
It's not going to fix it. It's not going to
it's
Yeah.
give
not
you
going to
that feeling
restore
back.
anything. And that's where I think transformative justice comes into play. But I still think that there are some issues with transformative justice. So transformative justice is focusing more on really getting to the root, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's impactful and I think that it's a good direction to go. I just think that we need to create a better system because from what I gather and what I take from transformative justice, it's trying to work towards healing, to putting in the supports, but it's doing a similar thing than what we already do is here's a referral, go to these people and they'll help you, right? And it's another one of those barriers to accessing the resources and services. I think that we need long-term transformative change where we have these programs in place where it's a more holistic thing and it's a more hands-on, right? Like quite literally there have been points in my life where I needed somebody right beside me coaching me through this moment to get through, whether it's an anxiety attack or it's a severe depression or it's I need services for whatever reason. I need you to literally hold my hand. I don't know how, right? And I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, well you just go and talk to the people." And there's times that I've gone and I don't even know how to articulate and I just leave, you know? And I think it's a difficult space to be in for victims, but I equally think that it's a difficult space to be in for offenders. And I think that that transformative healing process needs to occur separately, right? But holistically for both of those individuals. And those programs, in my opinion, will look very similar because what do we know about offenders? Most of them have experienced adverse childhood experiences, right? I think the data says that around 80% of adults 21 or over have experienced at least one adverse childhood experience, right? And so when we think about that, that's huge. But when we look at our population of people that are involved in the justice system, that number is closer to 95%.
Yeah.
95?
95%.
It was very interesting to learn, especially last semester, with how events that occurred in your childhood transferred over to adulthood and really shaped how you act. And I think that's what kind of shifted my mentality was hurt people. And if nobody
Yeah.
has helped them heal, they
They're
don't
going to
know how
start,
to do any better.
yeah, they're going to bleed all over everybody else, right? And by way of hurting them, right? And it's just going to continue. And that to me leads us to creating a more integrative system where we are partnering with a lot of social institutions. I think that there are a lot of institutions like healthcare, right? Healthcare needs to be involved in this conversation because we're talking about neurological things, right? Right. There are physical traumas that happen, right? But they impact us on a biological, neurological level. And we need healthcare systems, behavioral healthcare to help inform this process,
And be
right?
integrated as well, not just sending somebody for mental health care and ignoring their physical needs, or sending them for physical needs and not
Right.
addressing their mental health care as well.
Absolutely. Like justice is holistic, right? So we're talking about types of justice. We're talking about social justice, economic justice. We're talking about criminal justice.
Mhm.
We're even talking about some aspects of environmental justice when we talk about justice, like, making sure that we're paying attention to these areas that people have needs in, right? And then creating a system that is responsive to those needs, right? Because, like, as you mentioned, we don't just have one singular need, right? And we're not just struggling in one singular area, right? When we talk about victims and offenders, we can't just say a victim, oh, well, this happened to this victim, and this is the one need that they have, right? It's a complex array of needs.
They're human.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's like a trickle effect, right? A domino effect. When one thing starts to fall, other things start to fall, right?
Humans are the most complex
Yeah.
creatures. It's not just one thing that happens and
Absolutely.
then you fix that problem. Like, no, you're healed. No, you're not.
And I think
Yeah.
that speaks to the different areas of justice and being holistic. Is education as part of that too.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
With us we've talked about it before, with us being such complex humans and not understanding how to be human and learn what it means to be human.
absolutely. Like, we do not even educate ourselves as a society, right? On a holistic level
Mm-hmm.
about what it means to be human. Like, I have had to learn so many things about how I operate as a human on my own, right? I don't think there are classes or any programs within our primary, secondary education that say this is what emotions are.
100%.
And this is normal. In fact, we do the opposite. We allow what? Two emotions? Happiness. Happiness is always allowed,
Mhm.
and sadness to a degree. The other ones, well, they're wrong. Don't have them. And if you do, well, we've got a program for that, right? Anger's not allowed. And anger's such a valid emotion, right?
It's what you do with it, how you
Yeah,
react.
absolutely. And then we don't teach people how to manage our own physiology. Most people don't even know what we're talking about when we say manage your physiology, right? So we're talking about all the bodily processes of our heart rate and our breathing and, just those kinds of things, thought processes. We don't educate people about those things, and that's an injustice, right? And that's one of the reasons we have this cycle of, education. It's the school to prison pipeline, right? So from education to prison, right? We don't even know how to handle that. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, let parents handle it. Okay, well, if we want to have a real integrated, complex, really comprehensive thing, we need to put the emphasis into it. We spend so much time trying to educate people about math and science, and half of it, most people would say, I don't even use.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, like, even things like, doing your taxes. That's like a freestyle thing. Figure it out on your own.
I just input that stuff in.
Yeah.
You don't know if it's wrong and they're going to
Yeah.
audit you like
You don't even
2
know
years down the road.
the questions. You're like, I don't know. Do I have this? Do I have carryover from last? Like, right? We got to figure it out or pay somebody else to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like these vital things about what it means to be a human that we just gloss over, and we focus on discipline, we focus on conformity, and we don't really focus on actually educating people about what it means to be people. And then we wonder.
Yeah, I mean, people gloss over it all the time. And I mean, if you focused on that, then the problem wouldn't be as big as it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then we focus on the dehumanization of offenders as well because
Yeah.
we're not well versed in that. And we take on the assumption that they're not human, they haven't been through those adverse childhood experiences, and they're not affected by, those situations similar to how somebody else who is in that situation turned out different.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah. There's
And
always a comparison, right?
yeah.
I hate comparisons.
Especially when we're talking about trauma. Like, I hear so many times, like, oh, well, this person experienced trauma and they didn't go to prison.
Do I look like that person?
And it's
Is my
like,
name that person?
yeah. And the thing is like, we can't even compare it like that because we all have different coping mechanisms. That's another thing that we don't educate people about, right? We have different ways of coping with things. And some people might overwork, and that's the way that they cope with their trauma. And so it looks like the normative, right? You're working, you're productive, you fit within the conformist view of what it means to be a human in this society. So here's a gold star for you. And well, you're not functioning and you're not productive and you're not conforming to the goals of society. So you go to jail.
And that's where I think we do a really big injustice is in that comparison because you're not looking at it as what is fair to this individual in that moment, allowing them grace to say, this is what you've experienced, this is how this impacted you, and what can we do as a community to help, bring you back to being whole.
Yeah, and they don't have this view, right?
No.
In the justice system, even individuals, justice involved individuals are stigmatized, period. Like they're deemed as bad, as broken, and in need of repair. And well, you have to repair yourself. And we've done a phenomenal job of providing you with resources and opportunities. And well, if you didn't take us up on those, then that's on you and that's your problem, right?
Mhm.
You just need to fix yourself, right? And like we have that purview of stigmatizing them. But in the same sense, when individuals that are involved in the justice system have experienced trauma or they have adverse childhood experiences, we demonize them people as well, right? We don't look at them as victims, right? We still stigmatize them and say, oh, well, yeah, they grew up in a bad environment and like they're just, that's the way they were raised and that's how they're going to be. And like almost like a hopelessness. There's no helping them. There's no change. It's just they're the revolving client. We'll see them again. They're a repeat, right? And it's just, it's, I hate to say it's unfortunate because that's to say, oh, what can we do? Nothing. But that's not the case. Like, it's not hopeless, right? What we've learned is healing is possible. It just takes a different approach.
Takes the right mindset.
That, yeah, but like we keep throwing like when we did trauma and crime, right?
Mhm.
And we read Bessel van der Kolk's Body Keeps the Score. And one of the quotes in the book says, anger management is great and all until you're angry, right? I mean, and that could not be more true, right? Like I know how to manage my physiology, right? But there are times where I just cannot, right? Because of whatever is going on, like, being triggered by something, right?
And that's trauma, and it's overwhelming your ability to cope and be able to process those.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to say, yes, this is what you should do, but put yourself in that
So
position.
shoulds again, right?
Yeah.
All these shoulds. And that's what the justice system does. That does a disservice, that is an injustice to the individuals in not just our community, but the people that they serve is they prescribe, right? They tell you, you should do this and you should do that. And it's like, hold on just a second. Like, it's not that simple. It's not black and white. It's not clear cut, right?
Mhm.
I am a human. I have a complex array of needs. And we really have to work towards, if we want to work towards justice, we have to work towards creating a system that is focused on healing, right? Because I don't think any victim wants retribution. They want to heal, really. I mean, in the beginning, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, and I don't remember the word that you used, but it was something to do like acting out of the moment. Um, and it's like waiting for your anger to subside to make these decisions, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, any victim may be like, this in the moment, like this person hurt me. I want them, I want justice. They use this word, I want justice. And what they mean is they want them to hurt as much as them, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that as time goes on, though, if you talk to them, that's different.
Yeah.
I think that as they actually begin to heal, they go, I don't want that. And I tell my kids all the time, like they'll hear a story about something and they'll give a response. And I'm like, hold on. I'm not trying to recreate the very system that I'm trying to undo at all. Like, I'm not trying to create more violence, right? And that's the thing about our justice system. And I think about victims as they go through the healing process is they get to this place where they're like, I would never, ever, ever want someone to experience the pain that I've experienced, right?
Mm.
And so I think that if you talk to victims maybe in the moment, yeah, they might very much have a vendetta. Like, I want them to burn, right? I want them to hurt. But as they heal, that shifts and that changes and they go, no, I want healing for them.
I heard something once, and it's honestly what opened my mind to everything. And it's not to take away from any party, but the offenders, it's also the worst day of their life when they get arrested.
Absolutely.
Victims, whatever happened to them, it's the worst day of their life. Like, both of them, something happened, something horrible happened, and none of them are really like there and complete anymore. Like, something is wrong.
Yeah, and I think that goes back more to like, you really do have that Eastern philosophy. Like, it's a collective, like it's a domino effect, because it's also the worst day of the lives for the spouses or the significant others or the parent, right? Or the children, whoever, right? And it impacts, even if we talk about like, a child is impacted by this because their mother was victimized, right? And their friends are impacted because now their friend is hurt because their friend's mother was hurt, right? And so it trickles down. And then if the, the victim maybe has to take time off from work, well, then that business is impacted, right? It is this collective impact, right? But in the Western world, we're like, nope, you did this. It's all on you. Nobody else is involved. I mean, even we think about in our society, like even when individuals are arrested and they go through the justice system and then they're incarcerated in prison, like that prison now has been impacted. They have another person to care for, to provide supervision for, to make sure they meet the needs for. They have to make sure they have enough officers to cover all of those beds and all of these things. Like it's never just this individual person did this and they should be punished. We are all punished. We are all punished in some capacity. And that's why we really have to figure out a way that we can come to an agreement about what justice looks like, because what we're doing now is an injustice. It's an injustice to everyone involved, all of the parties. If you even think about individuals that work, practitioners, right, that work in the justice system, it's not like, oh, yay, we got a new person, right? It's more paperwork. It's more work for them to handle. And we want to work towards reducing the impact on all of our resources, right? We don't want to overburden those individuals, right? And if we look at other places that have more Western views but are doing different things, like Sweden's prisons look like college dorms, right? And just imagine, because there's a lot of research that's been done on environmental design and the built environment and what it does to individuals, right? Just think about like never seeing grass or just always seeing concrete or bars and how it impacts your mental health.
Dehumanizing.
Absolutely. It makes you feel like you're living in a cage and you're an animal, right?
And then we're supposed to, say it's not a life sentence or, something like that. We're supposed to turn these individuals back into society, and we've contributed to degrading their mental health and their stability. And we say,
Yeah.
once you leave here, even though you've experienced this for how long you've been here, you're supposed to be normal.
Yeah, and we gaslight them. We gaslight them as, like, oh, well, being incarcerated was really, traumatic for me. And being in solitary confinement was really traumatic. Well, you shouldn't have done what you did. It's your fault, right? Or it's not that bad. Get over it. If you don't like it, don't do it, right? So they gaslight them and they invalidate their own experience. I don't think I've ever heard anybody in the justice system go, I know that must have been really hard to be incarcerated. I know a lot of the things that we have to do really are traumatic. I don't think so. I think that they have this purview of, if you don't like it, don't commit crimes. That's your fault, right?
And if that would have worked, we would have had, less
Absolutely.
people in prison.
Right, we would have been like every other country.
Yeah, we wouldn't have a rising prison population despite a decrease in crime, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that perplexing?
Oh my
It's
God.
crazy.
Yeah.
I was looking at that in Dr. Cecil's class because I'm in American Correctional Systems right now. And
Yeah.
I was just like, is this accurate? Or is this the right graph? Or is something wrong? No,
Yeah.
nothing's wrong.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think about.
Yeah. We have a disjuncture in, like rapidly decreasing crime rate for the last, 40 years, something like that. And a rapidly increasing correctional or incarceration rate. And it's like, that doesn't make sense.
And especially when you said, I think it was, 80% of the prison population will ultimately re-enter society. And what
Mhm.
are we doing to make sure that once they're released, we're not repeating the same cycles?
Yeah. And I really think that we also have to talk about the role of power when we talk about justice, right? Who holds the power and gets to say what justice looks like, right? And largely it's the majority, right? Mostly white individuals who hold power, and they get to decide what justice looks like for the victim, right? And for society. And they're using Black and brown bodies as an exemplar, right? This is what it looks like. Lock them up and throw away the key. Come down hard. View them as super predators or, these, born criminals, like inherently bad people. And that's just not the reality. Like, they've been so over policed, over surveilled, over incarcerated. And when you look at the rates in which they're incarcerated at higher rates than their white counterparts, it really highlights the role of power and identity in who's incarcerated. The same can be said for class, right? So we talk about looking at the intersectional lens of justice. And what does that look like? And we see that individuals that are experiencing poverty have higher incarceration rates, higher involvement in justice system, right? It's because they're being surveilled.
Well, and I think one thing was interesting too, talking about the different classes and levels, white collar crime, where quite literally that could have a larger impact based off of, the business they're stealing from or
Yeah,
what
the-
happened that they're doing.
The
It's a
quantification.
larger effect, and
Yeah.
yet we're treating that, as, oh, that wasn't as bad.
Not much. Yeah,
Yeah.
like absolutely. When we look at white collar crime, it accounts for a much larger substantial amount of loss. And when we mean loss, we're talking about like financial, economic loss, right? And juxtapose that to all property crimes, it still far surpasses it. But we are hyper focused on property crimes, right? And white collar crimes, it's just like, whatever.
And
Yeah.
the injustice in prosecuting one versus the other and the punishment one versus the other
Oh,
is
absolutely.
so vastly different.
There's a stark contrast even in punishment when we even talk about the way in which their punishment looks.
Yeah.
So for individuals who are, convicted of white collar crimes, most of the time they pick which prison they're going to spend their time in, right? And they pick what day they're going to show up to do this. And they pick, like all of the luxuries that they have, right? And it's like, okay, well, where is the same treatment for, you know, folks that are from, impoverished communities, folks that don't have financial resources, black and brown folks, right? Because I know a whole lot of white wealthy people are getting to pick which prison they go to and, if they get to be near family or not, right? But another thing is about those individuals who kind of conform to what the justice system says and does. And I know that the people that are more vocal about injustices tend to experience the same types of treatment that those who are in poverty do and black and brown folks do as a form of punishment. It highlights it. I don't know if you're familiar with the Chrisleys.
No.
Yes.
So the Chrisleys are a family. They were based in Georgia, in Atlanta, and the father is a real estate mogul. He worked his way up from like nothing. His mother worked in factories, and he like became a multimillionaire. And he ended up getting a show with, I think, A&E.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chrisley Knows Best, and
I watched that show with my
yeah.
dad.
I've watched it too. Yeah. It was highly successful, but the state of Georgia started investigating them for tax evasion and tax fraud and all of the white collar crimes, like wire fraud, things like that. Anyway, ultimately, the mother or the husband and wife were convicted and they were sentenced to prison. And this was a couple of years ago.
Really? Was
Yeah.
it?
I think they're coming up on like 3 years.
Wow, it was that
Yeah.
long ago.
Yeah. And so the man, Todd Chrisley, he was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison and something like, I don't know, $30 million restitution. And then the woman, his wife, was sentenced to 8 years. I think it was 8.
Sounds about right. A little less than him.
And 17 million in restitution. And they have appealed, right? But mind you, they got to pick where they went. Todd is in a Florida prison, and the woman is in, I think, Tennessee or Kentucky, but she's in it's not a traditional female prison. They filed a classification for her to go to like a medical facility because she was previously diagnosed with cancer. She's in remission. She doesn't need treatment, but it's cushier.
And also the people who, have cancer that don't get that luxury of going to a facility like that.
And so the issue, so they got to pick, right? All is fine and good for them. They're, in a close proximity to their children who are based in Atlanta, both north and south and all of that. The problem has arisen from them being very vocal and their daughter being very vocal about prison conditions, about the treatment that they're getting within the prison, about the victimization that they're experiencing. So everything that we're talking about, they're saying, this is true. Someone needs to do something. There's no heating or cooling in our prison. There are, rodents and there are critters and, like they have treated me in these ways. They victimized me in these ways. Other people have victimized me. And they are being very, very vocal about this, not just through their lawyer, but through their daughter and their, writing letters and things. And they have been attacked and punished by the judge. They did an appeal for the woman, and the judge basically reprimanded the daughter for speaking out and being so vocal, and then denied the resentencing and said she gets the same amount, despite reducing the loss from 17 to 4 million, but kept the 8 years, right? So the loss goes from 17 to 4 million, but you're still going to serve 8 years, right? Even though they determined she wasn't responsible for several things that occurred now, right? But there was a punishment, right? And even Todd, that prison has since now they've announced that it's closing due to the conditions. but they're not saying it's because of their vocalness. But now they're threatening to move him all the way to upstate New York, which is very, very far from their family in Atlanta,
Mhm.
as punishment, right? And so as long as you're quiet and you don't speak out about the conditions or the disjustice, right? It's okay, right? And it just really highlights the experience that most people have in our justice system, right? That most people that do not have affluence have. And I mean, I think I could have predicted going into it just because of the type of people that they
Oh,
are, that they were not.
Uh-huh.
First of all, they are bougier than bougie, okay?
Mhm.
Like, absolutely. I don't know.
I'm gonna have
Like,
to look this up
you
now.
you will.
Oh my god. And
It
the
is
series is
absolutely
hilarious.
hilarious and authentic, like, just really. But I could have predicted these people were not going to sit quietly by
Mm-mm.
and take this. And like it's to the point where I'm almost like really like close to like, Savannah, girl, come and have a seat. Let's work together. And I almost like messaged her one day on like Instagram, and then I was like, maybe I shouldn't. I don't know. I don't want that. Please don't look at me. Like I don't want that treatment, you know? But like it is, and it's so funny because like you don't necessarily expect the affluent to have those experiences, right?
Mhm.
And it's just, it highlights the injustices that are really going on. Like, we're talking about the most advanced country, the most advanced nation in the world, with all of the affluence and the growth and the resources. And we have a justice system that is so severely broken that even going into the justice system, coming out, you're even more broken.
The justice system needs to go through its own healing system. Like with like
Yeah.
just like with the victims, offenders, they need to go through healing. Well, so does the justice system,
Yeah,
honestly.
and the thing is like the role of power in this is so important because when people are given the ability to make decisions and choices for other people, like they have to have the right mindset.
Mm-hmm.
They have to be in the right space. And I think that a lot of people have good intentions, but the stigma that we have in our culture and the toxicity of what our view of justice is muddying their ability to see in so many ways.
100%. And honestly, I don't like that power plays such a big role in it because I don't want someone else deciding for me what someone should get as a sentence. Like I know victims like sometimes you're never in the right mindset immediately. You have to heal. But I also feel like they need to have a bigger voice in what should happen because for them to heal, they need the other person to heal. They need to know that like what is happening is right.
Both parties have to be willing to participate, and that's, I think, where
And that takes so much time.
a lot of the issue lies is one party could be willing, the other party could not.
Mhm.
And then are you willing at the same time? Have you had a shift in mindset? You know, I think there's a lot of factors there.
I think it's
Mhm.
really important to focus on that idea of willingness, you know. It takes awareness, you know. There's plenty of offenders that don't necessarily think that they have a problem, but rather, you know, like if y'all could just leave me alone, you know, let me do my thing. And that's where I think education is so important and comes into play. But I think that it will take a lot of work. But I think that it's also understandable that individuals that work within the justice system can get to the point of views that they get to because of their constant exposure to the same people, right? And they think that they're helping these individuals, saying, here, go do this and go do that and go do that. Well, I did all these things for you. I got you hooked up with all this. Why didn't you change? And change just doesn't work that way. It's not about change, right? Change can have a negative connotation in those moments, right? to ask people that are suffering to just stop, which is quite literally what you're doing when you say change. Can you just stop? Right? It's impossible. Right? And a lot of people don't even recognize that the reasons that they do the things that they do and what they're doing is a result of their own suffering. You know, like a lot of times they just lack that awareness. It's an ignorance that they just don't know. I know for me, it took a lot of learning for me to recognize, oh, okay, I'm doing this because of these early childhood experiences. Or, like this is a result of that.
I would agree. I think, especially taking your class last semester, there were things that I learned about myself, and I was like, this is why I've done things this way, or this is why I've approached situations like I have, and looking at it from a different lens and being willing to be open. I think that's where people in the justice system, as well as victims and offenders, can benefit from additional education on that, and additional
Yeah.
awareness of this is maybe why you're doing that, and how can we move forward.
I think that's so important. And I was thinking as you were talking that I think that, like I said earlier, like social institutions, like all of them need to be involved. Education needs to be involved. Like to bring someone in to the justice system, it should not be a punishment. It should be a facilitation, right? Of how we grow from this. How do we advance and move forward? And it needs all of the systems to support that individual. And I think that education is one of those things. Like it supports you on so many levels, right? It supports you on a personal level, right? Mental level. It supports you financially, economically, whatever, socially. Like it provides so much, right? But I think that people are cut off from it. I think that there is a lot of barriers to accessing education. And I think that if we can alleviate some of that, let's just overhaul all of our institutions so we can work on justice.
Well, I think it's interesting too, because when we think about education, people have different views of what education means. Does that mean math and science, or does that mean growing your intellectual mindset in various different ways? So I think it's interesting to not limit that term of education as well.
Yeah, I use 3 terms to refer to 3 different things. So I use school to refer to the actual ways that we are taught, right? Learning is a word that I use to refer to actual equipping ourselves with knowledge and growing. And then education is like the institution, right? And my kids will tell you, they're like, I hate school, but they like to learn. They hate school. And I'm like, I work in education and this system is broken, right? I don't work in school. I do facilitate learning, but I work in the institution and it's largely broken, right? And if we're going to work towards justice, it's going to take all of the institutions, right? But I think at the root of all of our conversation is we really need to get to this place where we can come to an agreement about what justice is that is not focused on punishment, that really works towards the root of it. And I don't think that we necessarily have that answer. I think that it's a work in progress and it's a joint effort. But I want to thank y'all today for talking to me about justice. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope we can continue more conversations about this concept. I think it's a really important topic. So thank you for joining us today. This was Justice Talks, the podcast where we are focused on criminal justice reform.